Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
Let's get the usual background details out of the way. My name is Daniel Foster. I'm 47 years old and about as average as they come. At 59, I'm neither tall nor short, and at 175 pounds, I'm in decent shape. Most of my hair is still intact, though it's turning gray, and I keep it cut high and tight. I run 3 miles a day, more on weekends, and can finish a half marathon in under 2 hours. I drink socially, don't smoke, and have never cheated on my wife. I spent years working in the IT department of a financial institution, climbing the ranks from a simple programmer to an executive overseeing a large department. It took long hours and frequent travel overseas, particularly to places like Thailand and Argentina as outsourcing ramped up. And yes, that part was rough. Watching close friends lose their jobs to cheap labor never sat well with me. What the corporation didn't know was that I had been quietly setting up opportunities for our best employees elsewhere. Over the years, I built a strong network of industry connections, and now that was paying off. I negotiated excellent retention and severance packages for my team, ensuring that those who stayed the required 6 months to train their offshore replacements walked away not just with a solid severance but also a substantial bonus. Because of my contacts, I had set it up so that 2 weeks after the layoff, they would start another job at a similar company with the same or better pay than what they had. If the leadership ever found out what I had arranged, I would have been let go on the spot. As for me, I negotiated a deal where I also received a very lucrative package, and the company bumped up my time of service to actually let me retire. I then just had to leave for 6 months, and they would take me back at my present salary but at a lower level position. All I had to do was mentor the new management team. One extra side benefit was that I could work remotely. My office was basically any place that had an internet connection. What resulted was my being at home all day and night and working what amounted to about 4 to 6 hours over a 24-hour period. That is a pretty sweet deal. Since I was home, I assumed the primary role of housekeeping, shopper, laundry worker, and cook. I didn't mind, as for the past 20 years, due to my long work hours, all that work fell on my wife, Laura. She never complained, really, but I always felt guilty. My doing this now for the past 5 years has made me feel much better. I still don't feel I have made amends, but it is a start. Laura is my wife of 22 years. She is 43 years old and a beauty. She is 56 and weighs 125 pounds. I met her 23 years ago on the beach. It was a Bo Derek moment. She was just coming out of the water and did one of those head moves, whipping her hair back, and I was on the sand watching her every second. She had on a one-piece suit that fit her so well, high cut on the sides, low cut on the top, and oh, that moment. Turn the clock forward 20 years and 2 kids later, and she is still a knockout. Laura works downtown for one of the remaining large insurance corporations. She has been there since we married. Her schedule is pretty solid, as she leaves for work around 8 a.m. each morning and is home at 6:30 p.m. each evening. 3 times a week, she uses her lunch or spare time to work out at the company fitness center. Could be a class like yoga, or it could be the elliptical or treadmill. She showers and then gets home all at the same time as non-workout days. She rarely has a girls' night out, but once every few months, she will have dinner and drinks after work with a few of her close friends. It is always at a local restaurant, not a club, and I have an open invitation to join, which I have used often. Now, here is where my story begins. We fell into quite the routine regarding my wife's return home from work. She would always make a beeline to the kitchen table and drop her backpack in the left chair at the end, farthest from where we sat for dinner. The table seated 6, but since the kids had long moved out, we only used one end, closest to the appliances and counter space. The far end became a place for mail and her bags. She would say, "Hi, hon," and then either follow it with a short statement of "Today sucked" or "What a great day." Her next move was to make this simple announcement: "I am going up to change." My immediate reply would be, "But I love you just the way you are." She would follow up with, "Oh, you're so cute," and then walk over to me and give me a quick peck on the lips and head upstairs. Upstairs, she would wash her face, removing her makeup. She would then put her hair back with some sort of headband and finally put on her comfies, as she called them, and then sit down with me and chat about the day. While she was upstairs, I would make some sort of pre-dinner cocktail. It was that way every workday for the last 5 years. Until today. Today was just a tiny bit different, but it was enough out of the norm for me to catch. At the time, I had no idea what it meant, if anything, and I just let it go, as I didn't know what to say or why I would say anything. What happened today was, instead of the little peck on the lips, I got an air kiss. You know, the kind you see on TV shows where two women who don't really like each other meet at some social engagement, and they just ever so lightly pucker their lips and smack the air near each other? It was that quick little gesture. What I also noticed as she quickly breezed by was the usual light scent of her perfume, but also a very unusual light scent of cigarette smoke. That didn't hit me as anything wrong, but since she has never come home from work with any kind of smoke smell, I found it strange. You can't smoke in the building at her place of work nor on the grounds. Restaurants and bars are all now smoke-free. The only time she smelled of smoke was when she went to the casino, and then it would be a knock-me-over smoke smell. Laura was once a smoker, but that was well over 20 years ago when we dated. She came from a family of smokers, while I was from a non-smoking family. She quit sometime during our engagement, as she felt awkward and uncomfortable smoking around my family. She only had what is referred to as a social cigarette with friends in the first few months of our marriage. I hadn't seen her smoke since, so I said nothing. The evening continued as normal, and so did the next week. No more air kisses and no more smell of smoke. But then it started to happen again. Not every day, but more often. It started to get to be several days a week, but there was no exact pattern. It wasn't like every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It was just random. Still, I let it go. The next change that occurred was with her fingernails. Laura loves a mani-pedi. It is her escape for a few hours where she is pampered and comes back relaxed and feeling pretty. I can't remember the last time she polished, filed, or trimmed her own nails. Every other week, or on demand if we have a social event, she goes to the salon. She does not get the long, fake nails you see on some women. Laura always prefers what she called a natural length. She once had long, fake nails when she was a bridesmaid. She couldn't stand it, as she could not type, use the phone, and she feared breaking a nail. The pain associated with tearing off your fingernail terrified her. After the wedding, those nails didn't last the week. So, imagine my shock when she came home this time with long, fake nails. Not flaming red, as you may think, but a natural look or color, but long. Again, I didn't say anything. If she brought it up, I would have questions, but I wanted to see where this was going. Her misbehavior, if you can call it that, continued for the next month. Days with the same old routine, and now days with the new routine, as well as the upkeep of the new long artificial nails. My mind was spinning. What was causing the cigarette smoke? Why the change to long nails? Nothing else was out of whack. Sex was often and great, conversation was great, no girls' night out or sudden business travel. But I needed to know. I was confused and I was curious. It was early into the third month when things came to a head. It was a Saturday at breakfast when she informed me that she was going shopping with her girlfriend, Diane. Diane was a former coworker who had moved a few towns away. They wanted to go outlet shopping, which was about an hour from our home. She said that with the distance and the fact she had a lot to catch up on, she would be gone most of the day. This was not really out of the norm for her, and I had no reason to not trust or believe her. It was, for all intents and purposes, a non-issue. I told her to enjoy herself, and I would find plenty to do around the house and yard, so she didn't have to worry about me. Later that morning, she was off and gave me a big kiss goodbye. At about 7:30 p.m., I felt like going out for a quick bite to eat and was just opening the door to the garage. At the same instant, Laura was going to enter. It was one of those weird moments when I pulled the door while she was about to push. We came face to face in an instant, about to collide. You know how at those times you are startled and exclaim? All in that instant, for the first time, there was smoke on her breath. She excitedly drew back and said she had to pee and rushed by me to the bathroom. I don't know why I did it, but I then went to her car, which had the window down, and looked inside. The smell of smoke was strong, and I could see ashes on the floor beside the driver's seat. I had to snoop. I searched around in the glove box and under the seat, and then in the center armrest console. Nothing was out of the ordinary, but then something caught my eye. I saw a small makeup bag in the armrest. It was familiar, as she always takes something with her. You know what is usually inside the basic mascara, lipsticks, compact, hair ties. But what caught my eye was the rectangular shape outline on the back. I never noticed that before. Opening the bag, I saw a lighter and a pack of cigarettes. I mentioned that Laura smoked when we dated, but she was a Marlboro girl. She never smoked anything but Marlboros. Why did she have this brand in her bag? Even if she said they were not hers, they were in her makeup bag in her car. Now, I am not someone who will wait 6 months for a PI report with video and audio. This is not proof of an affair. All it means is she is smoking again. But why? How do I find out? Well, I can ask her, of course, but what will I get for an answer? You never know until you try. I took the cigarettes out of the bag and went back into the house. Once in the house, I could hear the shower running, so I knew she was covering up the smell. I went upstairs to the bedroom to check the clothing. I did a wash that morning, so the only thing in the hamper would be her clothes. Looking in the hamper, I found the clothes she was wearing, smelling of cigarettes. But no panties. None. The only time in our life together that she had no panties on was in bed or when she wore a bathing suit. She never went commando, so the underwear had to be in the bathroom with her. Or she went commando. Or she left them someplace. I went into the house and decided to call Diane. Sure, she could cover for her, but like I said earlier, you never know until you try. We still had an old-school phone book we kept. I know in modern times we all have cell phones, but Laura still used this for when she wrote out our Christmas cards. I wouldn't have Diane's number in my contacts, and I didn't have Laura's phone handy to check her contacts. When I called Diane's, her husband, Jeff, answered. I asked if Laura had left her watch there. He sounded taken aback and said, "Why would her watch be here? I haven't seen Laura since you both were here 6 months ago." I then explained how Laura and Diane spent the day shopping. His reply sealed the deal for me when he informed me that Diane had been at her mother's in Phoenix all week. He asked what was going on, and all I could say was, "I'm going to find out," and hung up. I went upstairs to the bedroom, as the shower had stopped. When the bathroom door opened and Laura came out, she was startled to see me. I simply stepped past her and started looking for the panties. I saw nothing on the floor, or in any of the drawers, and nothing in the linen closet. She came in, a bit upset, and asked, "What are you doing?" I angrily said, "Come downstairs and we will talk," and stormed out. A few minutes later, she was dressed and came down to the kitchen, where I was sitting. She took a firm posture and said, "What's wrong with you? Why are you acting so weird?" I said, "Why the shower?" and then held out the cigarettes and said, "I found these, but I couldn't find your panties. Who has them?" There was a long pause. She sat down, looking at the table and not me, and said nothing. "Laura, for over 20 years, I never lied to you. I think now you at least owe me the truth. For the last 3 months, I knew something was going on, but I didn't know what. There's the faint smell of cigarettes, the long nails, the avoidance of the kiss when you get home from work, and now the lie about Diane and the haste to shower. I know Diane is out of state visiting her mother." I called. "What's been happening at work has finally escalated to the point of you telling me lies so you could spend a day with him. Whoever he is, time to come clean. Up until now, I thought I knew my wife. I fully expected the denial and anger and her somehow coming up with some story and turning this all on me, as if I were a controlling and manipulative person. Instead, what she did next came as quite a shock. With tears in her eyes, she slowly reached out, took the cigarette pack, and lit one up. After a long drag, she exhaled and said, "Sorry, but I need this." She then began to tell me her story. I actually found her calmness unsettling. It all started about 6 months ago when I was assigned to work with the mergers and acquisitions team. The company had plans to enter into the healthcare market, and with my former positions in the legal department working with lobbyists and my experience as chief of staff for several former departments, they felt I would be a great addition to the team. It would be more clerical and research than I do now and offer excellent visibility. No promotion or pay raise now, but it would really set me up for the near future. Later that week, we were all told to meet in the boardroom for the introductory meeting and hold a kickoff, a meet and greet sort of thing, and then receive our assignments. That is when, I guess you can say, the trouble started. As soon as he walked in, I was struck. It was an instant attraction. I felt like I was hit with lightning. "I saw you. I saw you just as you were when you were 30 years old." He had the same hair, same face, and same mannerisms. It was like I was transported back in time, with the exception of being bigger. "Bigger?" I asked. "Well, he's like 6 feet tall and broader. But remember, you also had a firm and strong physique as well. You were and are just shorter." I intentionally insinuated, "But he's bigger." Her look told me all I needed to know. "It's not like that, honey. That's not what I was after. I love you, and I love how we make love. Just go on. I don't want to hear about you and your sex buddy." She let out a gasp, took another drag of the cigarette, and continued. I stared at him the entire time, not hearing a word of the presentation. He would catch me looking, but he paid no attention to me. I was just another person at the table. For some reason, that pissed me off. I somehow felt like it was you that was not interested in me. I must have lost my mind because at that time I felt that I had to take the initiative and I had to win you over. It was, again, like when we were young and dating, and I did everything I could to keep you. It was like I was losing you. A week or two went on, and I did everything I could to gain his attention. But he was very professional and treated me no different than anyone else. I didn't know what I was going to do. Then something happened that gave me my window of opportunity. The director said we would form small teams that would work on individual assignments, and then once a week we would regroup as a larger team and report on our progress. I knew the person who was to determine who paired up, and I asked if they would put me and Ethan together. Ethan, that is the guy who took my wife. No. Yes. His name is Ethan Carter. But no, he didn't take your wife. I was the aggressor and I am, and will always be your wife. We'll see about that. She shuddered a bit, took another drag, and then continued. Once we were paired up, we spent all day together. I just kept seeing you. And again, in my fantasy world, we were transported back in time. I must have been insane. I don't know. But again, the more he just acted like I was a common coworker, the more I felt I was losing you. You had no interest in me. I turned up the flirting. I would touch his hand, his shoulder. I would sit closer and give him what I thought were sexy looks. He never said anything. But I noticed he didn't remove my hands. She finished the cigarette and lit another. What about the smoking? Have you been a closet smoker all these years and just got careless? As we worked closely together, I learned Ethan was a smoker. He took frequent breaks, and when he came back, I could smell the smoke. One day when he was going for a break, I asked if I could go along. I said we could continue to discuss the project while he had his cigarette. Since there is no smoking allowed on company grounds, we would go across the street to the small cafe. We would get a coffee and then sit outside at the park. One day he saw me staring at him while he smoked, and he apologized and asked if his smoking bothered me. I told him no and mentioned that I was once a smoker, but quit a long time ago. This continued for a few more weeks, and then one day I figured that if I smoked, then maybe we would have some connection. We would have something in common. I asked him for one of his cigarettes. That is what got me smoking again. I moved my workout time from noon to later in the day, so I would shower at work using the fitness center before coming home. But on days when we had later meetings, I couldn't. So, I guess those are the days you started smelling smoke on my clothes. The nails, I asked. She took a deep breath before answering. At some point, when Ethan and I were at the park smoking, I saw him looking at me. And it was the look I had been waiting for. He showed an interest. His gaze was the same one I see you give me when you're just daydreaming about something, and when I catch you looking, it makes me feel sexy and wanted. I just smiled at him and said, "What?" He blushed. He actually blushed at being caught. He told me he thinks pretty women who smoke are sexy. I was sexy, he said. He always had a thing for girls smoking long white cigarettes with long nails. Now, at this time, I didn't have long nails, and we were smoking his brand of cigarettes, Newports, which have a cork filter. That's when I decided to get my nails done and buy my own cigarettes. It was at this time that things between us started getting serious. We continued to have these breaks several times a day, but we then added lunches. We often had lunch together, but now it was a daily thing, and we would drive to different restaurants. Instead of talking about work, we talked about everything and anything. We were becoming a couple. I clenched my jaw. That's an emotional affair, even without the sex. To me, it's cheating. She quickly replied, "No, Daniel, we didn't have sex. It was just lunch." How do I know that? You could be making out, petting, hell, you could be giving him a BJ on the way back to work. She shook her head violently. No. I didn't do any of that. It was just lunch and holding hands. We couldn't do that. We would get caught, and neither of us wanted to get fired. So it was the fear of losing your job and not the fear of losing your husband? She hesitated. It wasn't like that. Remember, in my mind, I was with you and not him. Yeah. The bigger me. I get it. The tears became sobs, and she looked broken. Ethan wanted me to have dinner with him. As much as I admit I wanted that too, I couldn't. As confused as I was, I knew I had to get home each night as usual, and there was no way I could fit in dinner with him and still come home. I rarely worked late, and something like that would be a dead giveaway. So if you could rationalize that, then you were not crazy in thinking this was me. You knew the difference. If you really thought that he was, in fact, me, as you said, you would think it was dinner with me. Now I sound crazy. So at that time, no matter what state of mind you were in earlier, you were now as sane as can be and were worried about being caught in your affair. She nodded. I guess you're right. I sighed. So today was your answer to not doing the dinner date. You knew how trusting I was, so you made up the shopping trip so you could have a full day with your sex buddy. She buried her face in her hands. Yes. I am so sorry, Daniel. I don't know why I did it, and I won't do it again. I will end it right now and do whatever you want me to do so we can make it right. I love you, Daniel. I stared at her, my stomach churning. Laura, I don't love you now. I loved the Laura that I first met. The Laura that I married. The Laura I knew up until 3 months ago. The Laura in front of me now, I don't love. Her face twisted with pain, but I continued. What you did was wrong, but let's face it. It's who you are. I'm no shrink, and I never studied people's minds, but I believe the reason you were able to cheat is the fact that it was always in you and bound to come out. If not now, then tomorrow or next year or maybe another decade. This crazy idea about a younger me is just some stupid excuse. I mean, a really far out there stupid excuse. Do you really think I'm that stupid? You really insult my intelligence beyond belief. For whatever reason, you wanted to cheat. You saw some available young stud and set out to get him. That's the truth. You are a cheater. Plain and simple. She sobbed harder. Daniel, honey, I wasn't thinking. I really don't know what I was thinking. And really, I will stop. I won't cheat again. I let out a bitter laugh. I compare a cheater to an alcoholic. Right or wrong, that's my analogy. At birth, a person doesn't know they are an alcoholic. They can have a drink often for years and keep it in control. But at some point, one drink becomes too many, and it consumes them. They can go to AA and get sober and stay sober, but for some, they fall off the wagon, as they say, and it starts all over. There's sadness and remorse. Then they again get sober and can stay sober. But then again, some will revert back to drinking, and the cycle starts all over. I really don't believe you can fix alcoholism. You live every day just keeping it under control. So how do I know that this will be a one-time thing? How do I know you won't have some relapse? Seriously, how do I know that you won't cheat again at some unknown point in the future? Her voice cracked. It won't happen again. You have to believe me. Please give me the chance to prove it. I shook my head. You say it won't happen again, and you say you're sorry. I honestly believe you, but what neither of us really knows is, can you? Or are you even capable of controlling it? Somehow you have the cheating gene, and even if you were strong enough to control it, I am not strong enough to live in that fear or under that shadow of doubt. Every day I would look at you and wonder if today is the day. Every time I see a change in your behavior, I will think you did cheat. Whether you did or not wouldn't matter. And then there's the fact that you had sex with someone else. Her face twisted in pain, and I put up a hand. I don't know what you did, and honestly, I don't want to hear about it. But the mental images that run through my mind disgust me. I kissed your lips. Where had they been? I was close to you, but now I can't help wondering if I was just part of something else. I don't know, but the thought lingers. Should I ever have sex with you again? Would you be thinking of me? Or of him? Does he kiss better than me? Will you wish I was taller, stronger? Do the things in bed he did? I would lose any arousal, even if I were able to get one in the first place. When I look at you now, I get permanent ED and sick to my stomach. I think I would perform better now with a protection and a street hooker. Her sobs turned into wails, but I felt nothing but emptiness. This was the only time ever. There were no second chances. He wasn't better at anything than you. It's over. I looked at her, my expression cold. Laura, for more than 20 years, I gave you what you wanted emotionally and financially. Now it's gone. The large house with the professionally manicured lawn and the in-ground pool we never use. The summer cottage on the shore we used to rent before and after we had kids. You just had to own it for sentimental reasons. The new house we just had built for our retirement. You insisted we do it now as an investment, so when we were ready to retire, we had a place closer to the cottage and had that equity built up. The place we were supposed to grow old together and watch the grandchildren you so wanted. We haven't owned it a year, and now it's gone. But most importantly, you have lost the respect of your family. What will the kids and our combined brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles think of you once this all comes out? She shook her head, still sobbing. I don't want this, Daniel. I don't want to lose you. I'm not going to go all out and fight and try to make you out to be some evil person and leave you penniless. It wouldn't work anyway, as we live in a no-fault state. I have no idea how this all works, as I am not a divorce attorney, but I hope we can just split everything 50-50ths. It sucks for me as I did nothing to deserve this, and yes, it is my wish to divorce and not yours, but as bad as pride and ego can be, I am not going to stay with you and become roommates. Hopefully, we can agree to sign over the cottage to the kids so it stays in the family. Together, we work out some schedules so we all get time there and we won't have to worry about seeing each other. This house is going to be sold anyway next year, we just move up the schedule. The new house in Vermont is another story. Not sure what we would get out of that, if anything. So we can discuss if you take it and pay the mortgage or if I keep it and pay the mortgage. Your job has you locked here in Massachusetts, but mine would allow me to live out of state. I don't see myself having to pay any alimony, as we both make equal pay. But there is always the risk you get some devil of a lawyer or some judge sees it differently. Let's agree to also try and keep our own 401(k)s. You know we each need that. But again, if it has to be split, so be it, we still each walk away with a good amount. I paused, my voice steady. By the way, if you think you have some long-term relationship going with Ethan, then think again. You yourself said when you met, he showed no interest. It was only when he finally realized you had presented him with the opportunity for some free and easy sex that he responded to your advances. What young guy with the morals to screw a married woman would turn you down? Sure, now that you will be available doesn't change anything. He will continue to screw you for as long as he wants. Hell, even when he finds a younger piece, he would probably keep screwing you as well. But things for you will change. It will be just sex and no love. And don't think this will be quiet, he will talk. No doubt about it. If he hasn't told his buddies yet, he surely will. Everyone at work will know what you did, and you will be the divorced easy lay. You will get plenty of offers, so don't worry about the lack of sex. It will be a long time before you once again find true love, but every sex hound in the company, married or not, young or old, will see you as an easy piece of meat, and you will be hit on day after day. It doesn't sound like a very exciting future, she gasped. Daniel, stop it. Please stop. I can't throw you out of the house, as it's in both our names. Plus, I don't see why I should have to pay for a hotel when I did nothing wrong. Until the divorce is final, you move into the spare bedroom, and I stay in the master. I have no plans to date, so don't worry about me bringing anyone home. I ask the same of you. I don't want to know where you are going, who you are with, and never bring anyone here. Ever. From now until then, we are roommates sharing the house. I'm done talking for now. And frankly, I've heard enough from you. If you still feel like talking, maybe we can find some time in a few days after we gather our thoughts and calm down. For now, I just want to be alone. Tomorrow, I have a 10 a.m. appointment with a lawyer. And that is how my marriage ended. It's only been 6 months since the divorce. Laura didn't fight, and things went pretty much as I wanted. The exception is, we did not sell the house in Massachusetts. Laura needed a place to live and wasn't sure where she wanted to reside. Nor was she able to get a place with what would have been her share of the sale. We do have an agreement that within a year some action has to take place, so she still has some time to figure it all out. I did get the house in Vermont where I now live. It's not the dream retirement like we had planned, but it is still a great little house with plenty to do for outdoor activities. I continue to run and fish, but sadly, I do it alone. Our family suffered a big blow. Prior to her actions, she was extremely close to my son and daughter-in-law. You know the saying, your daughter is your daughter for all of your life, but your son is your son until he takes a wife. Well, that wasn't true with Laura and our son Adam. Even after marriage, they were tight. Once my son found out what his mother did, he cut all ties. He refuses her calls and went as far as to say when he has a child, he will have to think long and hard before he lets Laura into its life. I have talked with him about being so cold, and I think, or hope, that at some point he can get back to a friendlier place. It does not have to be exactly like it was, but going totally out of touch is cruel. Laura knows I do not condone that behavior, but he is his own man. My daughter, Emily, had always been tight with me. It was a true daddy's girl situation. I did more with my daughter than my son. Well, that has changed now. She rarely speaks with me, except to call and tell me what a jerk I was for divorcing Laura. She blames it all on my stubborn male ego and tells me it is my insecurities that wouldn't just let this pass. She's right, you know. But that is who I am. Am I losing anything? Well, no. But my daughter just lost her share of my assets. Everything I have given to my son, Adam, who stood by me. So my daughter can now have her mother's assets. Laura calls me often, but not to beg for forgiveness or to reconcile. It is really the only way she gets any info about our son. And in return, I learn what's going on in my daughter's life. Our mutual friends keep us informed about each other since she doesn't tell me about what's new in her life, and I don't tell her anything about what I am doing. She knows I am not actively looking for her replacement, and I know that she is waiting for me to make the move to reconcile. She tells everyone that she knows she screwed up big time and wants us to get back together. She feels if she as much as goes out for lunch with a guy and I find out, then she would be cheating and ruin her chances. We are divorced, so that is not true. But if she wants to remain celibate, then that is all on her. I don't see myself with her ever again. My imagination often goes wild, and I picture her with Ethan, and the anger and pain start all over again. No one can tell me when it ends or how to make it end. But until then, I am where I am and she is where she is. A year later, I had just finished cleaning up from dinner. Something that takes but a few quick minutes since it is now always dinner for one. When I was startled by the doorbell. I say startled, because since I have been living here this past year, it has only been rung when a delivery guy rang the bell signaling that he had left a package. And I was not expecting any delivery. I made my way to the door, and upon opening it, I was surprised to see my daughter, Emily. "Hi, Dad." In shock, I just stared at her, saying nothing, until she broke the silence. "You going to invite me in?" "Sure." "Sorry, hun, I just didn't expect you. You really caught me off guard. Please come in." She scanned the place quickly and went to the sofa and took a seat. "I'd offer you something to eat, but I don't really have much to offer. Want a drink?" I was going to grab a beer and watch the news. "Sure, I'll have a beer. Whatever you're drinking is fine." I went to the fridge and grabbed a couple of local IPAs. "So, what brings you here after so long?" I wanted to say I'm sorry, and using the phone would be too impersonal. "Sorry? I think I'm the one who should be saying I'm sorry. Dad, we all screwed up. I've been talking to Adam." I interrupted. "You've been talking to your brother? Really?" "Yes. These past few months we've talked a lot and I think we're back to where we were before. Before, the divorce. That makes me feel good, hun. I really hated what happened between you and your brother just because of what happened between your mother and me. Dad, the divorce really trashed our family. I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. It's just that it wasn't just you and Mom that got divorced. The way our emotions took control, the entire family divorced. You divorced Mom. I divorced you. Adam divorced Mom. And Adam and I divorced. We broke up the family. This past year has been miserable. That's an interesting way to put it. But it's true. We all let the anger and emotion run wild. And it was a long time before I realized the damage that had taken place. I have called all of you, even your mother, and tried to keep in touch. I know. But our calls were clinical, almost businesslike. It wasn't like before. You called, but I really didn't participate. Adam never called Mom and rarely called me. You were the only one making any kind of attempt. But to be honest, it wasn't an attempt to reconcile. It's like you, as well as us, were just going through the motions. So what brought this on? How did you and Adam reconnect? It was our birthdays this year. I sent Adam a card and he sent me a card. There was no call, no cake, and no gift. It was just a simple card with a simple signature. It hit me hard. I thought back to all of the great, happy parties we had, and how my grandparents on both sides were so big on family. Family first, our grandpas would say. If they were alive, they never would have allowed us to drift so far apart so quickly. So, just as I showed up here, I paid a visit to Adam. I thought he would throw me off the porch, but instead, he nearly crushed me to death with his hug. I wish I was there to see it. We talked all night. It was a come-to-Jesus moment. We both realized we shouldn't have taken sides. It was a tough time, Emily. It all happened so fast and caught us off guard. She continued, "I understand. He is just like you. And he understands I am just like Mom. But that is no reason or justification for how we reacted. Talking with Adam helped me see that what Mom did has nothing to do with my views on a woman's rights. What she did was infidelity. She broke her wedding vows. Her right to do what she wants doesn't mean that cheating on a spouse is acceptable. If she wanted to experiment, she should have discussed it with you first and asked for a divorce. As hurtful as it would be, she would at least not have been deceitful." I nodded, listening. "And that story she gave you, yes, Mom told me about that. She has never been someone that could think fast on her feet. I guess that shows she is not a seasoned liar. Your mother never lied to me, except for this one time. Sure, there were some misdirections, as I call them, but that was nothing like this. I guess that is something that really added to the shock. It was so out of character for her. What about Adam? Adam was quick to realize that he was being an unreasonable hard-ass. He let his anger get the best of him, and his disowning both Mom and me was over the top. Just because I sided with Mom doesn't mean he has to ghost me. We have had disagreements before and always decided to agree to disagree. This could have been a similar reaction, and that would have allowed us to talk and come to terms much quicker than we did. I think what helped us both reconcile was neither of us was looking to accept what Mom did. We both agree it was wrong. Where we disagreed was the end result of the divorce. He feels you did the right thing, and I feel you were too quick to pull the trigger. I leaned forward, setting my beer down. I could accept that, Emily. Dad, hang on. I'm not finished. We actually know that, even though this affects us as a family, the decision is really between you and Mom. We got too wrapped up in this and took things to an extreme. We just have to accept the fact that the divorce happened. But it doesn't mean we have to lose our parents. We gave up on you guys. You both never gave up on us. I exhaled, shaking my head. I always knew you were a smart kid. So, is Adam talking to his mother? Emily nodded. Yes, but just recently. He talks once a week, and they are close but not as close as before. He's not angry, if you know what I mean, but he's still bitter. I honestly feel that very soon, he will warm up more. But what scares me is if Mom does start to move on and date. I don't know how he will react, as he can see that as a signal that it really is over. I mean, he knows the divorce ended the marriage, but if he sees her with another man, it's like a final blow. I nodded, rubbing my temple. Well, it's bound to happen sooner or later. Your mom is a beautiful woman and quite a catch. Emily gave me a look. Cheap shot, Dad. I shrugged. He hasn't been around at all? She shook her head. No, Mom hasn't seen anyone since that day. What a waste. That actually pisses me off more than if she had fallen in love with someone else. I mean, to throw away a marriage for a one-time fling. Emily interrupted. Dad, don't go there. Saying stuff like that isn't going to do anyone any good. She's not dating anyone. She loves you. I sighed. So no more experimenting, as you called it? Emily shook her head. No, Dad. Like I said, she hasn't dated or been out with anyone. I looked at her carefully. Why not you? You know she loves you, and you aren't dating anyone. Emily's voice softened. Dad, I told you. It's over. I exhaled slowly. I know she loves me, and I love her. But I can't get over what she did. Any attempt on either part won't work. You say you talk to her. What do you talk about? House stuff, mostly. Like the furnace wasn't working. So she asked me who to call and if I would review the estimate. Also, we had been updating the house, so she recently asked about hardwood floors for upstairs. Again, who to call and what would be a fair price. She also kept me up to date about you, like your recent promotion. I did call you to congratulate you, but I just got your voicemail. You never called back. Emily sighed. I'm sorry about that, Dad. But that's it? Just house talk. I nodded. Yes, just house stuff and catching up on you kids. She filled me in on you, and I gave her info on Adam. Emily hesitated. She says you never asked to see her. I nodded. That's right. I don't ask her, and she doesn't ask to see me. She studied me for a moment. Would you? I shook my head. Why? Why would I see her if I have no intention of getting back together? Why mislead her or give her false hope? Emily sighed. Just wishful thinking on my part, I guess. I know she wants to talk to you, to explain why, and see if you have any spark left for her. She says you never gave her a chance to explain. I shrugged. I know I didn't. At the time, I knew she was feeding me a line of BS. And honestly, I thought the more she said, the angrier and more hurt I would become. I was afraid of what she would say. What if I was at fault? What if I failed as a spouse or lover? What if she had told me I was the reason for her betrayal? I couldn't stomach to hear the whys or the how-longs or how it was a mistake. Emily's voice softened. She needs closure, Dad. Leaving her hanging like this is cruel. If you do love her, can't you at least give her some time in person? It may do you some good as well. You are just existing, not living. I scoffed. Me? Being cruel? I'm not harassing her. I'm not standing in her way. I told you if I started seeing her, I may give her false hope. Emily looked at me sadly. Dad, I am not saying date her, but I think that I would love that. I am just saying hear her out. You can express your feelings, and she can do the same. If anything, you can tell her flat out, but nicely, why you never wanted to hear her side. You can tell her you won't date her. You can tell her to date others. You can say whatever the hell you want. But please, if not for her sake or your sake, would you do it for me? I hesitated. Let me think about it. No promises. Okay? Emily smiled weakly. I love you, Dad. She hugged me tightly, and for the first time in over a year, I felt something other than anger and sadness. We spent the next few hours catching up on her social and work life, and I filled her in on what little I have done since the divorce, which surprised even me. How little I did. She was right again. I exist. I don't live. I suggested she spend the night, but she had to be at work early the next day. And work for her was about a 3-hour drive from my place. So we said our goodbyes. I thought how lucky I was to have her back in my life. 2 weeks later. It was a Saturday when I received a call from Laura. Hello, Laura. Hello, Daniel. Sorry to bother you, but the John Deere isn't working. I needed to mow the lawn, but it just won't start. Who did you use for service? I sighed. Did you call Larry or Kevin? Have them come over to check? Yes, that's the first thing I did. They checked the battery and the fuses, and everything looks good. They are the ones who said I need a pro to take a look. Okay. I used Capital Service in Worcester. They are right off of North Main Street. Could cost you about $300, but they do good work, and I always felt they were honest. Thanks, Daniel. Just one more thing. How do I get it out of the shed? I tried to push it, but it won't move. You need the brake off and disconnect the transmission. You're kidding. How am I supposed to disconnect a transmission? Easy. It's a small, narrow rod shaped like an upside-down L, just below the seat, facing the back. Just pull it out and it is disconnected. The tractor will move freely. You just push it to the driveway, and the guy that shows up does the rest. I can't push that big thing. Ask Larry or Kevin. They should have done that for you while they were there. Well, they left. I guess I could wait and call them again. Or you could do it. I sighed. Me? I'm 3 hours away. Why would I drive all the way there just to push a tractor a few yards to the driveway? She hesitated. It would help me out. And you don't have to leave right away. We can talk. Maybe even have dinner. Laura, we haven't seen each other in a year. I know. And I would really like it if you came. Please. I narrowed my eyes. Is the tractor really dead? Conveniently? She paused. Yes. I exhaled. Have you spoken with Emily recently? I bet she's behind this. Laura let out a small chuckle. Yes, Daniel. She was just over yesterday and asked if you had called. When I said no, she pretty much told me the ball was in my court, and if I was going to see you, I had to take matters into my own hands. She hesitated. So please, it can be just this one time. And I promise, I won't bring up anything you don't want to talk about. If I say anything that makes you uncomfortable, just tell me to stop, and I will. I rubbed my temple. Tomorrow. I'll leave early and be there before noon. But Laura, just you. Okay? No kids, no neighbors, no one else. Of course. And, thank you, Daniel. It means a lot to me. Her voice was so sad. So broken. And for the first time in a year, I wondered if I had made the right decision. Sunday just before noon. I arrived at my former home. The place hadn't changed at all, and I was pleased to see Laura kept the lawn in good shape. The flower beds she loved so much were also well cared for, and the colors of all the plants were vibrant, in sharp contrast to my dull, gloomy expression. I told myself to put on a good front and try to be civil. Laura must have been watching for me, as she came out of the door just as I put my car in park. Hello, Daniel. Thank you for coming so quickly. I really don't want the lawn to get too high, or I'll have to rake. I gave her a small nod. No problem, Laura. It's about time I made an appearance anyway. The place looks great. You've really kept it up nicely. She smiled sadly. Well, it's been a year. So, time to sell. I raised an eyebrow. I had Ben Smith from Johnson Realty come by, and he gave me a few pointers. He's done well for us in the past, so I figured we should give him this listing. I hesitated. I think we should talk about that. She tilted her head. What do you mean? When I had the sale of the house as part of the divorce, that was mostly out of bitterness. Why should you keep the paid-for house while I had a mortgage? I was going to use the money to help reduce my mortgage, but now, I think you should stay here. Her eyes widened. What? You've shown you can handle the place on your own, and I can continue to manage the Vermont mortgage payment. I'd like to keep my name on the deed, and if you ever decide to move, we can settle then. Her hands trembled slightly. We can do that? I shrugged. I can talk to my attorney and ask. I don't see why not. A tear slipped down her cheek. I'd like that. She wiped it away quickly and cleared her throat. I could help with the Vermont mortgage. I can send you a check for half each month. I think that would be fair. I frowned. But your name isn't on the deed of the Vermont home. She shook her head. Doesn't matter to me. Can you afford to pay it alone? I hesitated. Sure. But you'd be surprised how my spending has changed since I no longer have your income. I've had to make adjustments. She smiled slightly. Linda was actually a big help. Her income is low, yet she has nice clothes for work, and her rent is more than I would be sending you. She taught me how to be frugal. I chuckled. I don't believe that. She laughed softly. Seriously, I'm down to only one closet now. I buy quality pieces I can mix and match. It's no longer about the price of the outfit but the quality. And no more dozens of shoes I don't need. I took a page from your book. I have just a few pairs that match multiple outfits. I studied her carefully. I believe you, but I'm still shocked. She smiled. Would you like to come in and have a drink or something? I shook my head. After we take a look at the lawn tractor. She nodded. Fair enough. We made our way to the shed in silence. Laura led the way, and I couldn't help myself from checking her out. She was still as beautiful as ever and still had a beautiful frame to die for. She was dressed simply and casually, faded blue jeans, a shaped but not too tight cotton t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back by one of her colorful headbands, one I remembered her buying at a craft boutique she loved. For a brief moment, it felt like a year hadn't passed and the betrayal had never occurred. But as quickly as that feeling came, it was gone, replaced by sorrow at what I had lost. I don't know what happened. I used it a few days ago and it was fine. Now I turn the key and it doesn't start. Larry and Kevin both tried, and they couldn't figure it out either. I sighed. Are you okay? You don't look so good. She looked away. No, I'm fine. Just lost in thought for a minute. Let me try so I can get a better idea of what's going on. I sat on the tractor, made sure the brake lock was on, the blade engagement lever was off, and the gas was on. Turning the key, I heard the starter run. But there was no ignition, no spark. I recognized the problem immediately, as it had happened 3 years prior. I got off the seat and opened up the hood. Immediately, I smelled urine. Mice. Mice? Laura looked at me, confused. I nodded. Yes, mice. This happened before. They take the dried grass clippings from around the blade enclosure and build a nest under this plastic cover over the motor. In this model, the starter is right below where they nest, and their urine seeps into the motor and somehow binds some part of the starter. At least that's what the guy at the shop explained last time. I sighed, shaking my head. I can smell it from here, and I'm sure if I took the cover off, you'd see the mess. Since that last time, I always made sure to blow off the grass and clean it up as best I could. Laura frowned. I didn't know that. I feel so stupid. I shook my head. It's not your fault. I never told you. But I am surprised that neither Larry nor Kevin smelled the piss. I walked behind the mower and disengaged the transmission. I'll push the mower, you do the steering. Let's get it close to the driveway. You can call Capital tomorrow morning. It should run you about $500. If they say more, have them call me. Laura nodded. Thanks, Han. She froze. I froze. That was the first time in a long time she had called me Han, rather than Daniel. I didn't reply. I didn't make any smart remark. Let's have that drink now, okay? I hesitated, then nodded. Sure, Laura. I'd like that. Her face softened. I'll get the drinks and something to snack on. Why don't you take a seat inside the pool cabana in the shade? I'll be quick. I made my way over, stepping inside. The pool cabana was one of her better ideas. Just after we had the built-in pool installed and the entire back patio covered in stamped concrete, she had the cabana built. 3/4 of it was a screen house with electricity, a ceiling fan, and really nice outdoor furniture. The remainder was set up as a bar. Separating the two was a sliding glass door and screen. The ladies would sit outside, bug-free, and gab away while the guys sat in the bar and drank, played cards or talked sports, or did all three simultaneously. I used to have a beer fridge in there, until I found out the neighborhood kids were sneaking over and stealing my beer. Rather than lock the fridge, I just removed it. A cooler did the job just as well when we entertained. The memories flooded my mind. Laura startled me out of my trance when she walked in. Not much has changed out here either. She reached out her left hand, offering me a beer. Your favorite IPA. No, it's not leftover from last year. I remember how you always check the bottle date to make sure it's fresh. I picked these up last night so they would be fresh and chilled. I took the beer and, as she sat down, noticed she had one for herself, but also brought out her cigarettes and an ashtray. As she took out a cigarette and lit it, she looked at me, then at the cigarette. And with what I could only describe as an embarrassed look, she sighed. First, they helped me cope. But then, of course, the nicotine addiction kicked in. I shrugged. You don't have to explain to me. You're a big girl. I gestured at the pack. I see you at least went back to your old brand. She nodded. Yes. Every time I light a cigarette, it reminds me of the horrible mistake I made and what it cost me. Almost like a fitting punishment. But no way was I going to continue with the Virginia Slim brand. I'll admit I liked them better. But this isn't really about enjoyment. I exhaled. Weird. Huh? She nodded. Weird to say the least. I shook my head. Laura, I don't see any need to continue to punish yourself. What's done is done. And smoking to punish yourself won't make things right or better. You're just going to get health problems like your parents. Smoking killed them and you saw that firsthand. She swallowed. I know. I nodded. Well, let's change the subject. I didn't come here to lecture you about bad habits. She smiled slightly. Emily said you really wanted to talk. I met her gaze. Yes. You never gave me the chance to talk. I was too shocked to say anything. For a year now, I've had everything contained and building inside. And I don't think I will ever get closure if I never get the chance to tell you how I felt then, why I did what I did, and how I feel now. Will you let me? Her eyes softened. That's why I'm here. She took a deep breath. Emily explained it to me very well. She also told me she has made up with Adam and that you and he are now on speaking terms. It made me realize that I am the odd one out. She hesitated. I talk with Emily and Adam, but the only conversation I have allowed with you has been around the maintenance of the house or paying the bills. I guess it's time. I nodded. Thanks. She shifted up in her seat, sitting cross-legged. She took a breath, looked away from me, and began. Before I start, I need to know. Did you have any idea what was going on? I exhaled. Not exactly. I knew something was up, but I never suspected cheating. To be honest, I simply thought you started smoking again and were afraid to tell me. I could sometimes smell smoke on you, and you started to skip the welcome home kiss. She nodded slowly. Why didn't you say anything? I hesitated. I figured sooner or later you would quit or you would tell me. Confronting you somehow didn't feel right at the time. I didn't want to look judgmental. And remember, I had no idea there was another man. To me, it was about whether or not you were smoking. I chuckled bitterly. The new long painted nails threw me for a loop. I had no idea why you did that. And to be honest, it didn't really matter to me. If you wanted to try new nails for whatever reason, it was a non-issue. Again, remember, I thought you were doing this for you, not for someone else. She looked away. I wish you did say something. Maybe it would have shocked me to my senses. I studied her carefully. Really? Would that have ended it before it happened? Forever? Or would it have just delayed the inevitable? She swallowed. I don't know. I sighed. I think something like that has to be decided by you. To end for good. Someone else stopping it may have ended it at that moment. But would it have really been over? She wiped at her eyes. I guess we'll never know. I nodded. No, we won't. She exhaled. Daniel, I just want you to know, before anything else, that I am sorry. For everything. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, then nodded. I know, Laura, but knowing doesn't change anything. And as much as I wished it did, it never would.